All right, let's jump right into this explainer and literally demystify the magic behind Carlos Santana's iconic Latin rock guitar style. We're going to be using guitar instructor David Taub's incredibly clear step-by-step blueprint to really understand how this legendary sound is constructed. So whether you're stuck in a playing rut right now or you're just endlessly fascinated by the mechanics of great music, we are going to break down the theory, the techniques, and of course the absolute passion that makes this style so timeless. Here's our roadmap for today. We're covering decoding the Santana sound, 2 paths for soloing, beyond pentatonic box shapes, moods and modes, and adding color with arpeggios. Now, before we get completely lost in the scales and the geometry of the fretboard, we absolutely have to recognize the sheer passion and energy Carlos Santana pours into his playing. I mean, all the theory we're about to learn, it's really just a vehicle for that energy. The ultimate end goal is to express human emotion. And honestly, that is the true core of the Santana sound.
Section 1. Decoding the Santana sound, elements of a Latin rock legend.
You know, Santana's seemingly magical touch can actually be broken down into tangible, learnable techniques. It's this incredible melting pot of blues, rock, salsa, and jazz fusion. And if you really listen, you'll notice some very specific techniques. He uses trademark trills and, crucially, these long, soaring, sustained notes that often deliberately lack vibrato. He takes these melodically pure, simple lines and pairs them right against incredibly complex backing rhythms. It's brilliant.
Of course, to get that signature sonic footprint, gear definitely matters. He relies heavily on the sweet, harmonically saturated tone of custom Paul Reed Smith guitars played through overdriven Mesa Boogie tube amps. Just imagine that smooth, singing guitar tone floating right on top of driving, earthy Afro-Cuban percussion instruments like congas and timbales. It's a real game changer.
Moving right along to Section 2, 2 paths for soloing, the master's strategy. So every soloist faces a major choice between 2 distinct paths. The first, playing what relates to all. This just means you find one scale that works over the entire chord progression, which gives your solo a super cohesive, unified sound. The second path is treating each chord as a separate event. Here, you're actually changing your scale or mode with every single chord change. It's definitely a much more sophisticated and challenging approach, but man, it yields incredibly highly textured results. The chords themselves are literally your roadmap here. They tell you exactly which strategy you should use. For example, if we think about a custom Latin rock jam track moving from B minor to E, the chords change incredibly fast. Because of that sheer speed, the most effective strategy is for sure to play what relates to all. You simply don't have the time to completely switch scales every 2 seconds without it sounding totally chaotic.
Section 3. Beyond pentatonic box shapes, breaking out of the rut.
Let's be real. Most guitarists basically live and die by the pentatonic scale, which, as the name implies, simply means a scale constructed of exactly 5 notes. A minor pentatonic gives us that dark, classic bluesy sound. But, and here's where it gets fun, if we add just one specific note to it, the flat 5, also known as the blue note, we instantly transform it into the 6-note blues scale. That single note adds a massive amount of tension, color, and grit to your playing.
But here's the thing, there is a massive trap that almost every intermediate player falls into, and that's getting stuck in the box. You know the feeling, learning one vertical shape and just running up and down it all day. Well, to achieve true fluidity across the neck, David Taub's blueprint connects 3 adjacent box shapes, stretching them horizontally 2 frets in each direction.
By linking 3 of these boxes together, you effectively double your fret span. I mean, it completely destroys that vertical, boxy sound and opens up these beautifully fluid, horizontal pathways. And the best part? The whole shebang is entirely movable. Just find your low root note, say the B note right on the 7th fret of your low E string, and you can instantly lay down this entire neck-spanning pattern.
All right, Section 4. Moods and modes, the secret sauce. Now we're getting to the really good stuff. The ACE framework, analyze, convert, emphasize, makes the totally daunting concept of modal playing incredibly easy to digest. First, you just analyze the chords. Then you figure out which parent major scale that mode lives inside. And finally, you play that major scale, but, and this is crucial, you heavily emphasize a specific target note to create your brand new mood.
It is honestly amazing how subtle changes create massive emotional shifts. Just think about the Aeolian mode, also known as natural minor, compared to the Dorian mode. There is literally only a 1-note difference between them. It's just the natural 6th in Dorian versus the flat 6th in Aeolian.
Yet that single solitary note changes the entire vibe, from dark, sad, and mournful to that much sweeter, mystical, bluesy tone that Santana uses all the time. Okay, let's actually apply our ACE principle to a B minor to E progression. When we analyze it, the presence of that major IV chord, the E, tells us we need to use the Dorian mode. So to play B Dorian, we just convert it back to its parent key, which is the A major scale. You are literally just playing an A major scale. But instead of resolving to A, you heavily emphasize the B notes to establish B as your new tonal center. So why does this matter? Because borrowing that A major scale over a B minor chord is the exact mathematical secret behind that mystical Santana mood.
And that brings us to Section 5, adding color with arpeggios, the final polish.
So what is an arpeggio? Well, it's simply taking the individual notes of a chord, but instead of strumming them all at once, you pick them sequentially, one by one. By doing this, you subtly infer the specific harmonic color of the chord underneath you without locking yourself into a heavy, clunky strum. It blends absolutely perfectly as a melodic phrase right in the middle of a screaming solo. Now, technique is absolutely key here. To keep the notes of the arpeggio distinct so they don't just bleed into each other and sound like a sloppy, ringing chord, you want to use a rolling motion with your fretting fingers across adjacent strings. Don't bar your finger flat. Roll it. Lift the pressure off the previous string as you sound the very next one.
Remember earlier when we talked about how fast chord changes usually mean you should play one scale that relates to all? Well, as you get a bit more advanced, you can start dropping in a quick arpeggio to treat that fast chord as a separate event, just for a split second. Hitting a quick BM7 arpeggio over the B minor chord or an E7 arpeggio over the E chord instantly elevates your solo sophistication. It literally makes you sound like an absolute master navigating the changes.
Ultimately, while all this theory, the expanded pentatonics, the ACE modal framework, the rolling arpeggios, is incredibly powerful, you really have to eventually step away from the analytical mindset. Let your ear take over. Because if you're up there just doing math on the fretboard, the audience is going to hear it. Actually, scratch that, they're going to feel it, and not in a good way. Just enjoy the human experience of playing music.
We've given you the roadmap. You now understand the core ingredients of the Santana sound, how to completely break out of the box, and how to harness the moods of the major scale. But theory is just the blueprint, right? The final magical ingredient is entirely up to you. So pick up your instrument, have some fun, and ask yourself, what emotion will you build into your next solo? Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and keep playing.